Search for the Woodsman. Anyone who truly knows me understands that I have a deep love for all of God's creatures, especially the dogs that have graced my life. To me, they are truly family. A few years back, I experienced, without reservations, the most frightening thing I have ever endured in my favorite place, the forest. Sparky, my elderly Chihuahua, and I were enjoying time spent in a particularly active area that, in my opinion, is a nursery or preschool area for SASQUATCH youths. We were walking behind a building I call the enclosure, checking to see if there was any new activity from the locals in the form of structures or glyphs. This special place seldom disappoints, and both Sue and Randy Brisson have had significant sightings there. Probably my all-time favorite photograph was also snapped in this very spot, that being the beautiful, semi-cloaked, but clearly seen image of Ari himself. As a rule, Sparky walks this place off-leash, but he is never far from my sight. I clearly saw his curious nose leading him around one side of the enclosure, while I carried on a dozen yards further to check out the sad remnants of a fallen Sasquatch structure. There was nothing of note that caught my attention, and within moments I was in front of the building, walking onto the grassy field that fronted it from its opposite side. Sparky was nowhere to be found. I immediately panicked because it made no sense that I could not see him. Sparky at his age is never in a hurry, and methodical is probably his top gear. The majority of his time is spent marking his territory and laying sovereign claim over the land and its creatures. With near Olympian energy, I circled the enclosure and surrounding woods multiple times before scrambling up the wide road leading back to my car. By this time, I was in full panic mode, and I was screaming, "Sparky!" pleadingly at the top of my lungs. I was openly negotiating with God, the universe, or whoever was available to help. The Woodsman, or Sparky, and I share one thing in common: compromised hearing. Mine is not the best, and his was far worse. He was an independent little cuss and tends not to listen by personal choice, but in this case I was not sure he could hear me in any event. This fact, in conjunction with his age, size, and the density of the underbrush in all four directions, had me gravely concerned. After an hour or so, I was beginning to realize that I might not find him at all. The forest ferns towered over him, and if he had ventured off into them, scared and crouched down, chances are I would not. I also knew that if I walked out of these woods without my dog, I would never be able to bring myself back. This was where the magic was. It felt like my whole world was crashing in upon me. In the time Sparky had been missing, I had returned to my car 3 times, logic telling me his nose might have taken him there. On my final rotation, I heard a solitary bark that seemed to originate from the dense ferns right side of the road, heading towards the car. It did not appear to come from as far away as my vehicle, but I hurriedly headed there anyway, before circling back on the road towards the enclosure. Halfway back, I cut into the thick ferns where I approximated the bark had originated. The sounds of a chorus of angels trumpeting in heaven could not have sounded any sweeter than what I heard next. As I scoured the ferns for any sign of my companion, his brave little voice broke the silence with a series of barks. As I exited the thick foliage, I noticed him standing proud, directly in front of the enclosure, barking out to anyone who cared that it was time to get going. As an empathic person, I am no stranger to deep, heartfelt emotion, but the feeling I felt when I scooped Sparky up in my arms to hug him was beyond words. The what-ifs of the entire scenario terrify me to this very moment. I would not have left those woods emotionally intact if I had walked out alone. When Sparky and I got back to the house and parked the car, a surprise and an answer were waiting for us. Just to my left of my Volkswagen Golf on the asphalt road sat a beautifully constructed XA glyph, their friendship welcome message. Although the context of the message was slightly different from the meaning, it was completely understood. To me, it was apparent that my forest friends had come through for me once again, just as they had when I myself had gotten lost in unfamiliar woods a few years prior. Over the years, they have had a penchant for leaving glyphs by my car, especially in the case of loving support, as was the case with my mother's passing. As soon as I saw the glyph, I knew they were involved, and after some reflection, I have a good hypothesis about what had transpired. Sasquatch people interacting with our pets is not uncommon. Stories of forest people braiding the tails and manes of horses or taking them out at night and returning them before sunrise are not unusual. The same thing can be said of dogs. My friend Arla has shared many a story of her beloved dog Watto running off at night to play with the forest people. There was no questioning the fact that Watto enjoyed these nighttime excursions immensely, and she always returned exhausted but safe from a spirited night of play. Arla's story is not unique, and many others have said the same thing about the connection and relationship between the Sasquatch people and their four-legged companions. Sparky had accompanied me on my forest excursions for a number of years, and evidence tells me that he was familiar with many of the locals that inhabit the mountains here. Many times he would stop dead in his tracks, staring off into the brush at something that escaped my detection. His bark, demeanor, and wagging tail told me that he was greeting a friend. Conversely, on a few occasions, I have witnessed the opposite. His tail would be between his legs, and his rigid posture and anxious bark indicated that he saw someone with whom he was not yet familiar or comfortable. In my opinion, Sparky was either carried in or coaxed to head into the thick brush by an individual with whom he was familiar. This individual was almost definitely a curious juvenile that wanted to play with his friend. Sparky always stayed to the trails and open areas, unless he was following me. There has literally not been a single episode where he has wandered into the thick underbrush or strayed off the path of his own volition. Another curious thing was the initial bark I heard just before my final trip to my car and prior to finally locating him. It was far removed and in an opposite direction from where I eventually found him. I do not believe Sparky could have gotten from point A to point B in the short time it took for me to get to my vehicle and scramble back to continue my search. His age alone defied this logic. The possibility that the initial bark was not even my dog is also reasonable. The forest people can imitate just about any sound from my experience, and also have the ability to throw sound and or decide what individuals will hear it. On one particularly memorable occasion, I was headed to a rendezvous with Randy and another good friend at a prearranged spot. As I approached it, I heard what sounded exactly like my friends having an animated conversation in the forest directly above the trail. I yelled that I would be right up, but I got no answer. I was upon them within minutes, but there was no one there. As I headed back out an hour later, I saw my buddies just arriving in the parking lot, apologetic for being late. If the bark I heard was not Sparky's, then I think it was designed to keep me close to the area so that he could be safely returned. As my precious companion curled up beside me before bed that night, two things struck me. The abject terror of the what-ifs was still heavy on my heart, along with the deep, loving gratitude that he was safe by my side. The next day, Sparky and I went for another walk, and the comfortable feeling of his weight at the end of the leash never felt so good. My beloved woodsman has recently crossed over to the Rainbow Bridge. We shared many an adventure together. He will be sorely missed by me and his playmates from the forest. Safe journey, little guy.